Need I say more? It's time to install Linux Mint on this late 2012 Mac Mini. This is what's next. How's it going today? Well, I have decided to take the plunge and install a Linux operating system on this Mac Mini. We're going to use Linux Mint, current version 22.1. Now, to make this interesting, I have not tested this. I haven't gone through any of this. I know roughly the steps as I've done this on a couple Windows boxes. So we're going to learn together. So let's get started. Before we begin, one of the things that I want to point out is how to know some of the specs that are in this particular computer. So for all Macs, if you happen to go to the Apple logo and select About This Mac, we can get a basic rundown of some of the hardware that's in here. This might help with the download and installation of your Linux distro. Now, when I say distro, I mean distribution. So here we know that we're running a 2.5 gigahertz dual-core Intel Core i5, and we have memory at 16 gigabytes, and we have Intel HD graphics 4000. We can also look at the storage if we want, just to make certain that our drive is big enough. In this example, as in last week's episode, we reformatted this drive and installed macOS 10.15. We have a 500 gigabyte drive, plenty of room. Now, I'm not keeping macOS on this. We're going to go ahead and wipe the whole thing, and we're going to install Linux Mint, which is going to require a couple of steps. Let's begin with step one, which is download Linux Mint. So I've clicked the download button. We have installation instructions right here, and there's multiple versions that we could download. I'm going to download the Cinema Edition. Requires a little bit more horsepower to run the user interface, but this should be sufficient to run that. We're just going to scroll down the page, and we're going to look for a download mirror. Because I'm located in the United States, I have several to choose from. I'm going to use the James Madison University link. So let me go ahead and I'll select that. It says, do you want to allow downloads? I'm going to say allow. And then there is our download. So step one is almost done. If you want to see what your download is doing, depending on the browser, in this case I'm using Safari, I can view the download from here, and it's roughly a 3 gigabyte file. Let's download this, and then we'll come back in a few moments for step number 2. This is an ISO file, so basically it's a disk image. And eventually we're going to get it to this USB drive. You've seen this before. This is the Vansuni 64 gigabyte SSD drive. So faster at creating the disk image and faster at installing as opposed to a standard USB thumb drive. Now, you're going to notice that I have opened another tab, and that's right here, and it's Balena Etcher. There are several applications that are out there that allow you to create a disk image using a USB drive. We're going to download Balena Etcher. I'm going to first say, yes, accept all. And then we're going to say download Etcher. We have several options. In this case, we know this is a Mac OS. This is not the ARM processor. This is an Intel processor. So that's the one that I want to download. And this will take a few moments. Again, we get that download prompt. We're going to say allow. And this should not take as long as the ISO file for whatever Linux distro you are downloading. This is only 166 megabytes. And in just a few moments, there you go. We've downloaded our two items, our Balena Etcher to create the USB drive and the ISO file for Linux Mint. Now with our two files, I'm going to go ahead and just select out of there. And I'm going to quit the application. Now, in this case, on the keyboard, it was Windows Q. It's Command Q on a regular Apple keyboard. And there are our download files. So let's see, we have two. The bottom one is Balena. The top one is Linux Mint. I want the Balena Etcher right now. We're going to get the disk image to pop up on the screen. There it is. And you're going to copy this over, and it does look like this file does not work with this particular Mac operating system. So let's see if that is the case. And if I double click it, yes, So it needs 11.0 or later. I need to find an older version of Balena Etcher for this particular Mac. Well, I see where my confusion lies. I was looking in here and it says Etcher works for macOS 10.10 and later. But obviously something has changed and I'm still looking for the older version of Balena Etcher. I went ahead and I updated the Catalina install on here, and based on what I'm finding, I should be able to get an earlier version of Balena Etcher through GitHub. And then there it is, releases. Hopefully I can download it. I was having a problem with Safari. It wouldn't let me download earlier versions. Version 1.16. There we go. And this was the problem I was having. I couldn't get to the assets. There is the DMG file. Fingers crossed this is going to work. And would you look at that? I'm not getting a line through the icon. So let's go here. And I'm kind of wanting to do all this on the Mac Mini. What if this was the only computer you bought? That's part of the reason why we're doing this. Okay, so there's that. Let's close that window. Let's quit out of Safari. We're done with that. Let's go into our Finder, Applications, and Balena Etcher. So there we go. We finally, and it quit. All right, so that didn't work either. So let me try another version. All right, after trying another version, we are now up to version, let's see, 1.19.25. Now we can go ahead and quit out of this. And now we have Balena Etcher. So what do we have to do? So our first step is we're going to flash from a file, and we're going to go to downloads, and then there is our ISO. Now you see this behind here, that was from the last time. So there's our file. We're going to click open, and then we need to select the target. That's going to be this drive here. Let me get this plugged in. Okay, we are plugged in. We're going to select the target, J Micron Tech Media 64 gigs. We're going to select that, and we will flash. We're going to type in our super secret password, and it is now starting to build the disk. We're going to say, yep, you can have access to the disk, and there it's flashing. And because again, we have this SSD, this is in real time. I'm not speeding this up at all. We have our drive, and it won't be showing up in here, but what we do have to do is we have to get into our boot menu so that we can select that drive, and we'll start the install process. Like I said, learning as we go along. For whatever reason, the first time that I flashed Linux Mint onto this USB drive, it didn't work. So I've tried it again, off camera. We've now gone through, back to Balena Etcher, added our ISO, selected our drive. Now I'm going to flash this again. There's our password. Now it's flashing the ISO to the drive. We're now validating. Now the one thing that didn't happen before was when we were done with this, it didn't ask me to initialize the drive. Now it is. That's because it doesn't recognize it. I'm going to say ignore. That part's important, otherwise the next step will not work. That is, we're going to go to Apple and restart, wait for the bong, and then press the Option or Alt key. So we're waiting for the bong, pressing the key, we wait patiently, and we should see several selections on the screen this time. And we do. That's what we want to see, is the EFI selection. I'm going to select that and press enter. And then it's asking to start up into Linux Mint. We're going to select that, and we're going to give it a few moments to boot up. We should see the Linux Mint logo appear here in the middle. There's the icon. So we are now in Linux Mint. We haven't installed it yet. This is just running off that USB drive. Again, I'm using an SSD thumb drive. It's a lot faster than a standard USB drive, but or I should say thumb drive. But anyways, I do have functionality. This allows us to play with the Linux distro to see if it's something that we'd want to install. Now, one of the things that we're going to see off the bat here is that there is no network connection. So if I come over here and we type out driver, And then there's driver manager. We could select that. It's going to look for any drivers that are missing, and it finds this Broadcom. If we select that and we say apply changes, and again, if we're just testing this out, which is one of the nice things about many Linux distros, you get this ISO file where you get to play with it. It's going to install the drivers, and there are all of my networks. We are now have wireless, so that's cool. But now we actually want to install Linux Mint. So all we're going to do is, you see this little disk here, we just go ahead and select that, double click it, and we'll be able to begin installation of Linux Mint. Let's go through the installation process. My language is English. We're going to go ahead and click continue. English US is the keyboard layout for me, so we're going to click continue. It'll then ask us to connect to our Wi-Fi to install third-party software. Let me go ahead and select that. In this case, I'm going to install the multimedia codexes because I'm going to probably do some multimedia with this. Click continue again. Now, in between these screens, it takes a few moments, so don't rush through it. And then we're saying erase disk and install Linux. That's what we're going to want to do. I'm going to click install now. Basically, it's giving us warning that everything's going to be erased. That's fine. Click continue. Close enough. And then we are going to add in our stuff. So it's, hey, what's next? Hey, Mac Mini. Pick a username. We're just going to call it HWN. And then we're just going to pick a password. And we're just going to say require when I log in. That's fine. And here it says I must start with a lowercase, so HWN, and then continue. Then you're going to get basically this welcome to Linux Mint. It'll go through some screens. You'll see some progress down here. Right now it looks like it's creating the file system for partition number 2. So we're just going to speed through this, and then we're going to get to our desktop. All right, that took about 10-15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead. We have this prompt here. It says installation complete. We can either continue testing or we can restart now. I'm going to say restart now. So it says remove the installation medium instead of media, and then press enter. We have the bong of the chime from the Mac Mini, and we should see the Linux Mint logo. All right. We're getting there. We're getting Linux Mint on this PC. Is it going to work? Is this Mac going to boot up into Linux Mint? That was pretty quick. Super secret password. Here we got it. This Linux Mint is now running on this late 2012 Mac Mini. Here we are back again, and you'll notice that we do not have wireless. So we could, if we wanted to, we could plug in an Ethernet cable, so we have that as an option. We could also maybe even plug in a phone to get internet, but we're going to go ahead and try doing those steps again to get the Broadcom driver installed. If we go into our first steps, and we have the driver manager right there, I'm going to click launch, and it says, hey, you appear to be offline, which we are. And it says you can connect to the internet. Again, we have those other options, but it does say that you can insert the Linux Mint installation disk or USB stick. So we're going to go ahead and give that a shot again. So I'm going to come around to the back, and we're going to find a port. We're going to plug that in. And then I'm going to say OK. It says it found the installation media detected, so mount. We're going to put in that password again. Here we have the Broadcom driver. So let's go ahead and we're going to select this, and we're going to say apply changes. Here we go. And it says you can't download the package while offline. That's a problem. So again, we could connect it to Ethernet. I'm making the assumption that maybe you don't have Ethernet. So I'm going to try the phone part and see if we can get it to work. because that would be a wired connection. So let's go ahead and we're going to plug that in. I'm going to say trust. So with the iPhone, it's asking for the connection, and then let's see here, we're just going to say cancel that for now. Is not trusted. We already did that. And I'm going to see if we can get our internet to work, turning on the hotspot. We're going to say okay. We're going to try this again. It is showing that we're connected down here. All right, so it says that we have Ethernet. That's good. We're going to apply changes. It's downloading the driver. It says you need to restart the computer to complete the driver changes. So let's go ahead and we're going to restart. If you happen to notice down here, we actually have the Wi-Fi connected because it's using the same information it used when we booted up off of that USB drive. There's all my networks. I am now connected. We actually have Linux running. So we're not going to go through a complete run of Linux Mint. That's a whole nother video within itself, but we're going to just touch on a few things. First off, why did I install Linux Mint? Well, we're going to cover this in the conclusion, but this is a much more current operating system than the 10.15 that is last supported on here. So again, if we were giving this away or we were selling it, this is a safer operating system. We'll say it's more secure, it's more modern. So that's advantage number one. Secondly, because it is a slimmer, or let's say a more efficient operating system than, let's say, if we're trying to run OpenCore, and I have several of those videos, on this system, it runs slow. My Plex server is running OpenCore, and it's not a very speedy system. It's usable, and it is working, but speed-wise, if I wanted to use that server as a computer again, it's just not workable for me. But anyways, here we are in Linux Mint. We have our welcome screen. You have your first steps. You can make all sorts of changes. We can even use the update manager to get the latest stuff. We have the software manager. Those are things that we could cover in another video. But one item, let's check out browser capabilities, and we're just going to see, and again, I've not launched this before. This is all in real time. That was pretty quick. So let's, there's our privacy notice. We're going to close that, and we're going to just go to YouTube, which happens to be the first item on here. And let's see if we can find, hey, what's next? There's our resetting the Intel Mac Mini from the last one. There we go. We're running YouTube. It is set to auto 1080p. If we go ahead and we stop this, we can do stats for nerds. And again, it's not a 4K video, but right now we're showing 0 drop to 596 frames. We're going to go ahead and hit play. Okay, seems to be running. Quality's not as good as I would hope. It's optimal resolution is 640, so let's set this to 1080. We'll force it to that. There we go. Play that. No drop frames. All right, so that's good. Let's try a 4K video. We are set to 4K. We're going to go ahead and play this and see how many drop frames we get. So 4K video on this Mac Mini is going to be pushing it with Linux Mint. We're dropping almost like half of our frames. So 1080 is probably going to be your best bet with this older machine. And that's fine. That's perfect. Again, web browsing, productivity software, it's all going to be on here. And we'll review that in a later episode. There you go. We have Linux Mint 22.1 running on this late 2012 Mac Mini. Let's take it back to the studio for my final thoughts. Well, I hope you found the installation walkthrough with Linux Mint on a Mac Mini helpful. I wanted to present this installation process with the successes and fails along the way to make your attempt as smooth as possible. Now, am I saying you need to use Linux Mint? No, that's not what I'm saying. This is just one solution out of, many available in today's world of Linux computing. And while I love the option of running more current Mac operating systems using Open Core Legacy Patcher, there are just some Macs where installing it honestly doesn't make too much sense. And as Apple closes the door on running macOS on Intel-based Macintosh systems, there is the reality of needing to either purchase a Apple Silicon Mac or find an alternative operating system to keep your current Mac hardware running. Now, with Linux Mint installed, I look forward to playing around with the system for a couple of weeks, and I'll report back on my thoughts. Well, that's a wrap for today. Thank you for watching. It's greatly appreciated. If you liked today's content, could you just take a moment and give me that thumbs up? And to be notified on when I post new content, click the subscribe and bell notification icons. In the meantime, feel free to watch one of my other videos either here or here, and I'll see you again for another episode of Hey, What's Next?